Hey friends, I have about 8 million followers across social media and I want to show you how to get your first 10,000. Not just 10,000, but 10,000 people who care about who you are, what you do, and want to see what you post. And that matters quite a lot because you can have a very fulfilling career doing what you do, making content if you want, with 100 people who deeply care about what you do. And you could have 1 million people following you that don't really care that much, and you can still feel like you're always treading water. And the difference between those is all about how you build your following and how you build your business if you want to build a business around what you do. And the way we do that, and the way we get to 10,000, is by finding the questions that people have and how you want to answer them. That's really it. But in order for that to really make sense, we can explore why the number 10,000 is important, because this video originally was about how to get your first 1,000 followers, 1,000 subscribers. And I watched a lot of videos like that when I was starting off, and people have different opinions. So there's a lot of that already out there. But I feel like 10,000 is actually when I started to feel a little bit more momentum. It was really when the wheels started turning a little bit more. You start getting more of a feedback loop from your community, especially if they care about what you do. You can ask them about what they want, and then you can get ideas from them. It's also around the time, as mentioned, you have enough people to where you might be able to make a living and go full time and do more of this if you want. And very importantly, it's the process you build that helps you get to 10,000 that might really set you apart and carry you in the long term. And that's why the number 10,000 has some significance here, because you can kind of scrounge for 1,000, right? I say scrounge. I mean, if you enjoy doing what you're doing, that's great. But you can tell your friends, your family, hey, follow me on this new account. And they're like, oh, cool. You know, you can tell the friends of their friends, hey, follow this person, please, right? You can make a few pieces of kind of random content. You can just post puppies occasionally. You can post kittens, you can post babies, things people like, and people are like, oh yeah, I follow, it's done, right? You might even have a viral video or two or multiple out of that. But there's many different ways you get to 1,000 that might not work as well getting to 10,000. At the same time, the reason I didn't choose 100,000 is because, as mentioned before, there are some things that you can do to get to 100,000 a little bit faster that you may not have to do if that's not the life you want. You might not want a huge community. You might want something a little bit more low key, which is totally fine. So it's less important for you to get to 10,000 followers or 1,000 or 100,000, all of which are just random numbers, but more important for you to establish and learn the method that you want to use, that you're able to use, that you can use sustainably to be able to get to those numbers. And this video is to help you do that. In fact, some people might take issue with this statement, but it is actually easier in some ways, many ways, to get to 10,000 followers than it is to get to 1,000. And the reason I say that is because it's in the same way that it might be easier for you to get to another country than it is for you to get someplace within your country. Depending on your country, I live in the US, it might be faster for me to fly to Europe than it is for me to drive somewhere within the US, even though the distance isn't as far, right? Because I would choose to get in a plane. Whereas if I'm going to a different state, I might drive 10, 20 hours to have to get there. But depending on the part of Europe, I might be able to fly there in 12, maybe less. That's what I mean when I say that. Now, of course, after you're in the same vehicle, a plane's going to travel faster and you have to get past 1,000 one way or the other. But the idea here is to have the mindset and the goal of blowing past that rather than just barely making it. And the things we do to try to blow past that might be different than the things we do just to barely make it. I hope that makes sense. And to complete that metaphor, the equivalent of doing what we do to get to 10,000, to fly to Europe, and the plane that we board, actually the plane that we build here, is our method. So we're deciding what questions people have in the niche that we choose and how we want to answer them. So if you're watching this, you might have some idea or ideas of what you want to do. You might have already started a channel, maybe you haven't. Either way can work. I did my thing in fitness, right? So think about this. Let's say you are given enough money to cover your expenses for a few months. So you effectively can do this content for a living. So you do it full time. So time, energy, effort isn't really an issue here. And then you're faced with this idea of what do you want to do to grow this to a point to where it's sustainable for you and you get to where you want. This is an issue that a lot of content creators eventually face. And what I've learned is that you'll come to realize that there are many ways to get to your goal, but you want to choose the ones that you actually like, and it makes a big difference. For me, while I'm doing fitness, there are many different ways that I can make fitness content. So if you think about it a little bit, it's like, well, there's fitness content that's teaching fitness, right? So teaching form, instructing maybe some physical therapy things like to increase mobility, and maybe if you have this like back issue, oh, this stretch can fix that. So there's like a whole many channels who do that. But then there's stuff that's like, oh, more lifting based, right? So how to increase your maximum lifts. So the people who watch those might have some overlap, but they're a little bit different, right? So one is perhaps a little bit more mobility, function, lifestyle, and the other might attract mostly people who want to lift heavy, probably have been lifting for a while. So you see a difference there. And then there's like comedy. So it's like barely fitness, but it's just like fitness game show, fitness entertainment. All of which are totally fine, by the way. And by the way, if you're trying to max out views, fitness entertainment, if you can do that well, usually will get the most views because entertainment can apply to a lot of different people. I've talked about that before, and the thing that connects all of those things is what question do you want to answer? What question do you want to pose to people, and how do you want to take the people who are watching your content into that answer? Now, some of these are very direct questions, like how do I fix elbow pain? Right? So how do I fix elbow pain? Then you answer that. And then something like, how do I break past plateaus? Or how do I bench 315 pounds? And these are pretty direct questions. Here are the ways you can get there. So like question, answer, and then you can answer that in different ways. But even within that, you could give the answer yourself. You could interview people, you could collect studies and research, and it's like, so it turns out using a combination of these techniques can get you there faster. Right. But when we go into entertainment, which has a lot of potential, a lot of people want to incorporate some entertainment elements, you get an interesting thing because, well, what's the question here? And the question may not be as immediately evident, but it's still there. So 100 bodybuilders fight 100 power lifters, or they wrestle each other. So the answer there is who would win? All right, are bodybuilders better at wrestling or are powerlifters better at wrestling? By the way, I think the answer would depend on who has the more wrestling experience and knowledge. So you have to find some way to control for that. So that's kind of the implicit question. You don't really have to dig that deep. So the question usually isn't that deep. And there are usually multiple questions like, how fast can they do this? Well, how well can they do this? How thoroughly can they do this? And if you're into stories and things, you might recognize this as basic storytelling. So when we think about a movie like Finding Nemo, what's the question? Well, where's Nemo? Why, how do we find Nemo? And a lot of content creators love the idea of storytelling, but it confuses some people new to it and how it connects to what they want to do. So I'll just quickly talk about that. You can view each piece of content that you make as a question and a way to answer it. And how you connect those is how you're telling a story. So you are telling a story even if your content isn't directly telling a fantasy or nonfiction story. And if you want to think of it a different way, this is how you get and keep your audience's attention. But if you're feeling a bit lost, don't worry, because you'll see soon how all this connects to how you can get 10,000 followers. Because through practicing this, you might realize that not all questions are equally interesting to people. So showing what's in your garage might be the question, hey, what's in my garage? And you'll realize that, especially if you're just new to the scene, a lot of people don't care, right? And people might feel a little bit offended by that. It's like, well, what do you care? I care what's in my garage, and that's great. I care what's in my garage. I might care what's in your garage too, but there's millions of people in the world and millions of different garages. We can't care equally about all of them. So a lot of people will scroll past that and your content won't continue to grow. So I'm talking about video content, but same thing with images, same thing with text, same thing with audio if you're doing podcasts. It has to be able to get and keep someone's attention in some way. So I have other things, but I don't want to brush past that too fast because it's actually very important for a new content creator to understand, because the thing that a lot of us have to learn is the things that we care about, others may not care equally about. Right? And it's not meant to be offensive to anyone. It is just us recognizing how things are at scale. Now, there are some things that you might care about and not a lot of people care about, but you care about it so much and they care about it a lot. And you can really explore these things. And these are kind of like maybe like a film that not everyone likes, but you know there's a few million people in the world. And of those people, maybe a few thousand can watch your videos talking about how much you love this movie, how much you love this series that not a lot of people read. Maybe you can do multiple series and can be a discussion around that. So you don't have to choose the things that attract the most people, but it's important for us to learn the difference between what we care about and what our ideal audience might care about. And ideally you find an overlap and you really hit that. You care about it, other people care about it, you want to make more of it. There's a deep well of stuff that you can talk about there. And second, you might realize there are some questions that you can answer that would attract a lot of people. A lot of people would watch it, but they might not like you as a result. It might not fit the message that you have. An example in fitness is if I were to say, imagine a video title or this video concept. I walk up to the world's biggest bodybuilder and just slap him without asking him first. So it's not like we're doing a collab. It's like I walk up to him and it's like, hey, slap. Some people might want to see that, right? Like, I might be curious to see what happens, but I also wouldn't like the person doing that, right? I really don't like prank style content like that, where it's like you're going up and you're hitting someone, you're basically just hitting them for no reason other than the views. It might get a lot of views, but you can see from the comments, you can see some people, they don't want to follow this person. In fact, they might actively try to get other people to unfollow him. People might unfollow you if you do that. So you get a lot of views. You might even get a lot of money if you set it up in a certain way, but you might not get a following. And even if you did, it might not be the following you want. So the questions you ask and the way you answer them should be true to you, and that takes some exploration. And to give you an example of that, you can go to my main page, Hybrid Calisthenics. You can scroll through the shorts. I'm mostly a shorts-focused content creator, and you can see the questions that I've answered. So I talk about isometrics, I talk about calisthenics, and there's it's not really that crazy, right? So it's, if you can't do a push-up, how can you build up to doing a push-up? Interesting, right? So that was something that I was kind of surprised about. I didn't realize that many people were curious. And the thing is, next point is, the questions you find are generally more impactful than how you answer them in terms of how many views you might get. But how you answer them is still important, and is a big part of how you establish your brand, which is essentially how people view you. Because how to do push-ups, how to build up to push-ups, this question has been answered many times by many different people, and it just so happens the way I answered it resonated with some people, and I like that. I like doing the progressive calisthenics, I like showing the progressions, I like helping people build up, I like trying to help people. And if you're new to this channel and you're new to me, you don't have to believe me, but I do. I like doing that stuff, and I want to do more of it, and people want to see how I was doing that. So how I answered that question was different, and you can see that also in terms of views, because the short video of you can do pull-ups or you can do push-ups, I've remade those a few times. So I made those real fast because I didn't have a lot of time back a few years ago, and it did decently. I was like, interesting. So there's some interest behind this. It was a few hundred views, a few thousand views, if you want to know. And then when I felt like I had established a certain content style, which is what we're building the method, building the content style, I remade it, and I think got like 50,000, 70,000 views. So I'm like, interesting. So this new style of how I'm doing things, like a little bit fast-paced, adding some jokes, because that's how my mind works, people seem to like that. And then when I established my style a little bit further, I'm like, this is how I like to do content. I remade them again, and this time they were shown to millions and millions of people, and it brought people into the channel. It brought in new followers, and hopefully it helped a lot of people. And you can see from this that it was a journey for me to find the questions that I wanted to answer, and then it was a journey to say, well, how do I want to answer them? So one is the content and the topics that you tackle in your content, the titles, the subjects, and the other is basically your content style. How do you want to answer them? So you can talk about it in a very scientific manner. So you can just do a voiceover, you can make it a little bit fun, you can make it high energy, you could use some dry humor. Once again, you can interview other people who have done this. Different styles for you to try, and then you want to find a balance between what people seem to like and resonate with and what you like and resonate with. And through doing this, we get to the point of the video, because you might notice that as you're experimenting, you aren't necessarily getting as many followers as you were doing whatever you were doing before. If you had already started, you might say, well, Hampton, this is cool, but like people don't really care about my fishing, right? I want to do a fishing channel, and I posted a video about how I fish, and it really didn't do anything. I wanted to make a cooking channel or a music channel. I posted my cooking, I posted my music, and people weren't resonating with that. Honestly, when I posted my sibling, or I posted my puppies or kittens, it got a lot more views, and I actually got a few followers from that. That is less important, and this is the reason why I chose 10,000. It really could have been 20,000, 50,000, it could have been that, but I chose a moderately high number, because when you find your style, and you find the questions you want to answer, and you find the way you want to answer those questions, things can grow a lot faster. They can grow exponentially. And that, if you're watching this video, is what I'm trying to help you build, is when you find a method to build this content sustainably, rather than trying to make certain things here and there that might be able to get you incrementally towards your goal. I want you to be able to make a video that goes viral, and people are like, wow, I really like this new person that's doing fishing, music, or cooking. And especially at the time that I'm making this video, if you have a video go viral on any of the bigger platforms. Now, you can get 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 or more followers depending on what you're doing, and you can get them very, very quickly. And it's not so much about getting the followers, it's about finding the method and building the process. It's about finding and developing the type of content creator that you are and that you want to be. This really applies to a lot of different disciplines. So some people say if you want to be a novelist and you haven't written a novel, or you've written less than a few novels, just make one, even if it's quite imperfect, and then you go, that's interesting. You learn about your process. You learn, I'm fast at this. I'm slow at this. I need to work on this. And you make, and then eventually when things click together, things can happen very quickly. It might take a few months. It might even take a few years, maybe even longer. But we focus on learning about who you are and what you want to be and building the method and building the process more so than covering the distance and getting to the number that you want, then you may be able to go a lot further and may be able to get there a lot faster. In the same way that it might be faster for you to fly to a different country than drive to a different city. Or I guess you could walk. I hope this video can help. Thank you so much for watching. Check out Traveling Merchant Chronicles if you're into webtoons and webcomics. I have that on the Webtoons app, made it with my friend Yvonne. I've been working on it for the past year. It's been a lot of fun. It is a fantasy comedy. Check it out if it sounds like something you're into. Have a beautiful day.